Hello, and welcome to the first Diablo Quarterly update of 2022. This update is focused primarily on the environments of Diablo 4's vast open world, explored by Diablo's art team. And so in today's video, we will explore all 5 sprawling regions of Sanctuary, its visual aesthetics, a closer look at dungeons therein, and how the sanctity of this place has been fouled. So, let's jump into it. On the world of Sanctuary, environment artist Matt McDade said, "I'm excited to talk about the open world of Diablo 4. We have 5 captivating zones to explore. Each region is fraught with dangers of their own kind, many routes and hidden corners to uncover. How you choose to make your way through this vast open world is up to you." The art and design teams have constructed a contiguous world where you can roam from coast to coast or high up into the glacial ridges. For the environment art team, we want to ensure each handcrafted location is distinct and immersive. Looking through the Diablo 4 lens, the environment art, interactives and lighting teams strive to hit the tone that supports the Return to Darkness pillar. So, let's explore the regions. Skosglen Coast. Matt McDade said, "For the Skosglen Coast, the environment art team set out to tell the story of untamed, wild shorelines and headlands. As you transition toward the shore from the inland, the coastal biome is first evidenced by the longer, more directional grasses that react to the driving offshore winds. The beaches are bleak and littered with seaweed, kelp, and rotting carcasses. Rugged cliff tops ascend high, whilst promontories are carved by the continual pounding of waves below. Through the process of creating our biomes, the environment art team has set out to communicate that this coastline is rife with peril. For the main settlements along the coast, it is important to us that they feel woven deep into the fabric of the coastline. Dwellings with deep-rooted foundations skirt the cliff tops. In a futile attempt to withstand the harsh elements, these structures are comprised of whatever materials the locals could lay their hands on and are in various states of disrepair. Stone walls, salvaged wood, and thatch for the roofs. A place of consolation for the brave fishermen that trawl these treacherous seas. Fishing plays a significant part in the day-to-day life of these weary locals, so we've latched onto that idea and placed emphasis on these villages being centered around fishing. By adding supporting elements like rudimentary docks and slipways, it really helps set the stage for the interactives team to come in and layer on their culture kit throughout the area. Chaz Head added, "Many of the props here are dynamic. The ship swaying in the ocean waves, the fishmongers' nets hanging to dry in the marketplace. Our main purpose here is to breathe life into the awesome architecture and terrain work. Our props and culture kits help provide the tangible, real-world scale that the Diablo world represents. The drowned culture kit here is all interactable or breakable. When we set up these props, we push ourselves in terms of destruction. We use a constraint system to hinge specific pieces together. This allows to orchestrate distinct, realistic, and variable types of destruction. We do our best to tell the story of what has happened here. The drowned dredging with them hordes from beneath the sea, littering their conquest with relics of long-lost cultures as they raid across the beaches of Sanctuary." Ben Hutchings then added, "As you explore Diablo 4's open world, you'll experience a lot of variation in the lighting and weather. Here in the Skosglen Coast, you can see the foggy, frigid atmosphere taking cues from highlands and moors. Across the game, we're striving for a grounded and natural palette, allowing us to create visual space for gameplay that also achieves a gritty tone, suiting the world of Sanctuary." Orbe Monastery. Matt McDade said, "The Orbe Monastery is an isolated and secretive feature in the rural dry steppes. While the Zakaroom's presence has diminished, the Orbe Monastery carries evidence that places of worship of the Zakaroom can still quietly function. Since the location here is in the desiccated plains of the dry steppes, we aim to push the notion of dusty grasslands with sparse vegetation. We've made the conscious decision to add dark rocks that complement the pale blonde and rusty grasses. Poplar and saxual trees cling to the ground, which helps provide parallax movement on screen. This contributes to greater depth as elements in the foreground move quicker than those further back in the scene. To help provide extra visual interest in the region, the environment artist team created a salt flats biome, being able to have blue alkaline lakes skirted with salt-encrusted tufas and vivid geothermal pools really help add pockets of vibrancy to the dry steppes and create compelling natural landmarks. Against the efforts of the Zakarum worshippers, and like many of the buildings in Sanctuary, the Orbe Monastery is in a state of dilapidation. It is a goal of ours to visually communicate that while this place is in early stages of ruin, it was once a prominent base of learning for the Zakarum monks. Compared to the native architecture in the dry steppes, the Zakarum architecture is much more distinct and refined. These structures are adorned with ornate details and often accompanied by elaborate statuary. Chaz will elaborate on the interesting relics that can be found in the Zakarum estates, in which Chaz Head elaborates. Many followers of the Zakarum come to pilgrimage in the Orbe Monastery. Caravans along the road reinforce this idea. Making these wagons explode is always a fun time. As you can see, it has fallen on hard times. Much of the storage and keepsakes of the Zakarum have been laid to waste. You can pick through the ruins of the abandoned monastery. Perhaps there are still treasures to find. As you venture outside the monastery into the geothermal region, with many of its natural inhabitants to contend with, if you look closely, you will find their dwellings among the cliffs. Kyrvashad. Matt McDade said, "Our goal with Kyrvashad is to really drive home the idea that this medieval settlement feels oppressive, frigid, and harsh. However, we still need to convey that this is a place of refuge afforded to those who reside within its boundaries. This is a militaristic settlement, so it's important that we give it a heavily defended presence right off the bat. We believe it appropriate to provide a gradual build-up of smaller defense structures upon the approach to the settlement. Doing this hints to you that something greater lies ahead. Upon reaching the gates, you're confronted with the steep stone, perimeter walls, and a deep, cavernous moat that wards off unwelcome visitors. Upon entering the town, you see the architecture typical throughout Fractured Peaks, making use of the wood from the many forests in the region. Structures here are clad with natural pine boards and birch shingles. As with most dwellings in Sanctuary, these buildings are very much function over form. In the video, we can see a large portion of the southern end of Kyrvashad, which contains the simplest of shelters, some clinging to the town walls overlooking the glacial flow beneath. When you happen upon this area, we want you to draw similarities with the slum-type encampments where densely packed living quarters are in abundance. The Interactives team has done a fantastic job of really driving home that narrative with their culture pass. Jazzhead further states, Kyrvashad has many districts, with each one set dressed in unique culture kits. Here we have the slums, where the downtrodden seek shelter from the extreme elements. We support this idea by layering details of frayed cloth, broken shelters, and general unhappiness. Can you believe this is an example of high-end living in Sanctuary? Ben Hutchings went on to say, for this nighttime look at Kyrvashad, we can see the use of fog, soft shadows, and bounce lighting to create a softness to the lighting. This softness is a core part of Diablo IV's lighting aesthetic, providing a natural and grounded frame. We aim to give Kyrvashad a thick and lived-in atmosphere with warm and earthy tones, giving it a sense of reprieve from Fractured Peaks' cooler, frigid palette. Dungeons of Sanctuary. We added new and exciting features that allow us to make even more dungeons across the world of Sanctuary than ever before. In order to support over 150 plus dungeons, we've had to shift the way we make environment art so that it's flexible enough to be used in multiple locations and not just in a single dungeon. We break it all down into what we call tile sets. We'd like to share with you a handful of our tile sets and a few ways we can mix and match them with props interactives, and lighting to create dungeons that are varied, handcrafted, and yet procedurally created. It takes a lot of hard work from many teams to make a dungeon, and we are proud to show you what we've been working on, starting with the forgotten places in the world. Brian Fletcher said, "This tile set is an example of how we have returned to darkness. We want to take you deep underground to the darkest recesses of Sanctuary, where a mysterious and gross corruption has taken root. This ancient temple is a great place to push some primal horror vibes. The fixed camera is one of our best tools since it allows us to place assets in the foreground without blocking the playable space. Because we always know where you are looking, we can dial in and customize the layouts, vistas, and foreground elements to make sure there's a good composition. The spider legs are placed in specific locations for their unnerving silhouettes twitching in the background. Our dungeon design counterparts give us some great layouts to play with, which allows us to push the depth of each scene. We want you to have the impression that the dungeon goes on forever, and you're only seeing a small part of a large underground labyrinth." Chaz Head further said, "The props and interactives team seek to maintain the mystique and horror settings Brian described. Our hope for this culture kit is to make you feel uneasy whilst being rewarded for venturing forward. Nothing here should feel like it was crafted in Sanctuary by the people living on the surface. We were able to focus on different styles of shape language, monolithic and twisted. This is not a place you would want to explore alone," Ben Hutchings added. "Here, we can really see our embrace of Diablo IV's core pillar of a return to darkness. Our aim is to subtly lead you through the dungeon whilst revealing fantastically grotesque forms. In dungeons like this, we focus a lot on silhouetting the player space and giving the scene a sense of scale and depth. This helps navigation and visibility, but also the vastness of the environment. The Wretched Caves. Brian Fletcher said, "The world of Diablo is incredibly large, utilizing numerous unique tile sets to cover all the various zones, biomes, and cultures. In order to create so much high-quality content, we found clever ways to reuse our tile sets and add enough variety to cover 150 plus dungeons, all while providing fresh experiences each time. One way we can do that is by dressing up tile sets with various themes. This next dungeon is a hidden druid resting site overrun with demons. As you travel through the dungeon, you'll see that it is covered with many druidic cultural items such as talismans and charms. We place a lot of these items on a layer that can be turned on or off depending on what the theme of the dungeon is. In one dungeon, it's a druid burial site. In another, it's an uninhabited dark cave. Adding these sorts of details is a great way to add a lot of visual interest as well as visual storytelling. These assets were made by several teams, so this is a great example of many groups coming together to contribute to a final environment. Chaz Head added, "We were able to expand on the Druid culture kit in this dungeon. In many ways, the Druid is an exciting return to the Diablo franchise, no less for props and interactives, expanding on this unique class by providing a full kit for its reclusive people. It would be easy to make the Druid props fantastic, but we've stretched ourselves to come up with fun ways to keep the culture kit grounded while not turning the Druids into something they are not. I hope when you play Diablo IV, you get a sense of their magic while not betraying the dark and gritty world the Druids reside in, the flooded depths." Brian Fletcher explained, "The new dungeon boasts features such as seamless floor transitions or traversals are exciting, but my favorite new feature is what we call tile set transition scenes. These are scenes that allow us to connect two different tile sets together in the same dungeon. Imagine running through a crypt, only to find a hole in the wall that seamlessly leads you deeper into a vast underground cave network, all while keeping the randomized layouts that change with each dungeon run. In this final video, we show two tile sets joined together by a tileset transition scene. The first floor of this ruined keep remains dry and fairly intact, but as you journey deeper into the dungeon, you'll discover that the lower levels have decayed from the endless floodwaters pouring in. This swampy ruin is perfect for the drowned to move in and fortify themselves deep below. You'll have to fight your way through their defenses and climb across the rope to transition deeper into the flooded, ruined tile set. Chaz Head added, "I love this dungeon. It was one of our first where we dialed in the style for props and interactives in Diablo 4. On the surface, we have that definitive gothic medieval style fans love. Pikes, suits of armor and iron chandeliers. I hope this set reminds you of what Diablo means to so many of us. Part of that vision is the sense of danger of exploration. As you dig deeper, things get as you descend. You'll encounter obstacles seemingly out of place. The drowned have invaded this ancient manor and dragged their obscene valuables across the floors. This gives us the opportunity to mix kits, and I hope you agree, the mold-encrusted assets are gross. Things should feel familiar, but tainted by the sodden hands of the drowned hordes." Ben Hutchins then finally adds, "It's exciting to be able to merge two distinct visual styles. Here, we see the dark, foreboding hallways of the keep lead down into the putrid aqua tones of its depths. In both, we can see the same approach to lighting these dungeons with different executions. The keep has an oppressively dark, selective lighting scheme, hinting at paths through the corridors subtly with soft lighting. By contrast, the flooded depths use putrid green and yellow tones to really give the dungeon a feeling of a damp, heavy atmosphere." That's the end of the quick overview on how the artists approach the environment of Diablo 4. If you're looking to battle for the soul of Sanctuary together, make sure to check out the Discord linked in the description. To stay up to date with Diablo 4 videos and lore plays, make sure to like and subscribe for more dark lore.